All right, everyone. So we are going to go ahead and officially kick things off here. And again, once again, I just want to welcome you all to today's webinar, What is Welcoming? And this is the first in our two-part series that we are going through this week. My name is Anthony Salas, and I am the Senior Manager of Events and Membership. And before we officially begin, I want to go over just a few quick housekeeping items with you. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we will be sharing out a link to the recording in the next few days, so please look for that. If you have any questions, please let us know either through the chat or the Q&A question area, and we'll keep an eye on that and address those as time allows. And also just a quick note that this webinar series is officially off the record for those of you that are in attendance that are from the press, and we certainly appreciate you joining us here today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and officially turn us over to our first speaker today, Rachel Parrish, who is our Executive Director at Welcoming America. Rachel, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Anthony, and thank you all for joining us today. Again, my name is Rachel Parrish. I am coming to you today from suburban Maryland, and I want to just begin by acknowledging that I am sitting today on the ancestral and unceded homelands of the Nacotchtank and Piscataway people, and I want to pay respect to their ancestors and living descendants. My neighborhood just outside of Washington, D.C. also sits on what was once a plantation, and that history of stolen labor from Black Americans and its lasting legacy of racial inequality is the context into which many immigrants from around the world, including my own family, made this place our home. And of course, every community has a different history of pain, but also of pride and of rich heritage, not only in this region, but every place that people are moving to. And every community also has the potential to reconcile the new and the old and to become places where, whether we've just arrived or have been here for generations, all of us, truly all of us, can belong and can thrive and be celebrated together in the places we call home, no matter where we've come from. And together, we can work to build welcoming communities where that's possible. So whether you're new to this work or coming to us today to deepen your practice or to invite others in, Welcoming America really exists to be a resource to you. Whether you're in a big city or a small town or situated in a community-based organization, a school, a library, in philanthropy, business, the faith community, or within local government, we want to support your success in making your community a more welcoming one for everyone, inclusive of people with migrant backgrounds. And in a lot of ways, all of us really understand intuitively what it means to be welcoming. It's a value, a shared value that's about each of us being seen, being respected, and also giving respect, having the power and agency both to belong and also to make sure others belong too. And it's about us, and if we could go to the next slide, it's about us being neighbors, as our tagline here at Welcoming America says, a nation of neighbors. But being welcoming is also about a whole lot more than just being friendly or tolerant toward each other. Welcoming places have intentional, inclusive policies, practices, and norms that enable all residents with a targeted eye toward people with immigrant and refugee background to belong, to thrive, and to participate fully in the civic, social, and economic fabric of our communities. More than a decade ago, when communities across the United States and places like Tennessee and Nebraska and Minnesota saw themselves changing demographically, but the only ones who were talking about that change were using it to scapegoat and score political points based on fear, local residents and leaders got together and organized some of the very first welcoming initiatives, which were designed to remind neighbors of the values that we share in common, to break bread together, and to build trust and mutual respect. They then went on to make sure that that sense of belonging translated not only into goodwill, but also into good policy and practice. Things like making it easier to access English learning and workforce opportunities, to open a business, to support kids in school, to navigate and get involved in the community, to become the next generation of civic leaders, a next generation of Americans. Cities like Dallas and Charlotte and Dayton and Grand Rapids and Boise brought their communities together to set a shared vision for being a welcoming community, inviting more people and more institutions to be part of this vital work. And city and county governments partnered with community-based organizations and residents to reinforce trust and reduce barriers, and also to send the unequivocal message that everyone belongs, that everyone deserves safety and opportunity. And if we could go to the next slide. And what we've learned from the leadership of welcoming communities is that smart towns and cities build welcoming infrastructure, the community capacity to incorporate people and to respond in moments of demographic flux with resilience. It's an infrastructure that's built over time and built as a real partnership between civil society and local government, and between community and our democratic institutions. So that when cities like San Antonio and Philadelphia saw the arrival of people from Afghanistan last year, or asylum seekers being sent by bus, they had already built their welcoming infrastructure. They'd already built multi-sector collaboratives, established city offices, and really laid the groundwork with a narrative of solidarity that had been built and organized over years, so that instead of hardship and chaos, what we often hear so much in the narrative around immigration, instead of hardship and chaos, new people arriving were met with organization, capacity, and welcome. While new people arriving to a community may have different needs, whether we've arrived seeking opportunity or displaced by climate or by conflict, whether we came by foot or by plane, it's our shared humanity, not our identity or journey, that should define our potential to thrive. And we have the power to define that potential in our own backyards. As more and more people move and are displaced, we can plan ahead, we can organize, and we can be welcoming, no matter, and sometimes in spite of, the policies set by our federal government. Just as cities and towns are preparing for a changing climate by evaluating the resilience of their physical infrastructure, we can prepare for a world on the move by building our welcoming infrastructure. And the places that do so will have positioned themselves for success in attracting and retaining talent, for capitalizing on diversity as an asset and as a strength. Welcoming communities that have built trust and relationships between neighbors and with institutions are more resilient places better able to respond when disaster strikes, and also better able to rely on that foundation of trust and connection that's so essential for our democracy. And not just any democracy, but a thriving multiracial democracy in which each of us belongs. And here in the US, one of our key values is the idea that that ability to belong and to call ourselves Americans isn't defined by our race, our creed, our origin. But unfortunately, when it comes to everything from health outcomes to employment, to student achievement, public safety, and representative leadership, our outcomes and participation don't yet live up to our values fully. And the good news is that there's something that we can do about that. And so for the last decade, Welcoming America has been bringing together the community leaders who are working to create a welcoming culture and welcoming policies to define what that can look like and offer a supportive peer community to help each of us do it better. The other good news is that each of us can play a role, and needs to, because welcoming isn't really the work of any one single organization or a single program, but really an ongoing collective endeavor and a lens through which we can look at everything that we do. And if we could go to the next slide. Communities, including some that you'll be hearing from next in our conversation, that have worked for many years to become more welcoming, have also helped us shape the welcoming standard, which is really a tool available to anyone that any community can use, and which also forms the backbone of our certified welcoming program. And you'll see here the pillars of our welcoming standard, which we're going to be updating and re-releasing in 2023. So very broad and comprehensive, and also recognizing the incredible work already happening in many communities that can be built on. Including race equity. And I want to say that for communities who are already working on racial equity, the standard can be a helpful tool in addressing some of the particular barriers faced by immigrants, things like status and language and race, of course. And likewise, we've seen that efforts focused on immigrants that incorporate a race equity lens and that strive for a welcoming community for everyone can be far more effective. And ultimately, welcoming is about everyone. White, Black, Latinx, Asian, newcomer, long-timer. Welcoming is about our capacity to envision a future in which each of us can belong and thrive, again, no matter where we've come from. In communities of all sizes, one of the most fulfilling parts of this work is seeing that that vision is being lived out. And I hope that you'll join us as we continue to learn from one another and from our nation's leaders in welcoming as we reach closer to it. And actually not just here in the United States, but in collaboration with our Welcoming International Alliance of global partners around the world who are also working to build welcoming communities everywhere. That global welcoming movement is really fueled by leaders like you, like those of you who have joined this call. So we're glad that you're here. And speaking of fantastic leaders, we've got a wonderful panel coming up for you next. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Welcoming America's Deputy Director, Aisha Lee. Over to you, Aisha.
Thanks, Rachel. As Rachel said, we're going to have an opportunity now to get the practitioner point of view, to hear more about what it's like to get this work off the ground in local context by the humans who do it. So I'm super excited about that, and we're going to get right to it. In just a moment, our panelists will introduce themselves through a brief synopsis of what their day job is and what the story of welcoming is in their local context. And so they'll give you a better intro than just a bio that I can read. But just to familiarize yourself, we're joined today by Christina Da Silva from the city of Dallas, Emily Yaffe from the city of San Antonio. And Emily has the perspective to bring to this panel that she also led this work in the American South in the city of Charlotte, North Carolina. And Omar Cuevas, who is going to tell us about the business case and the economic development aspects of welcoming from the Grand Rapids, Michigan perspective. So I'm so grateful to them for joining, and I want you to have the maximum amount of time with them. So we're going to kick off some intros, and we'll go in alpha by last name. So Omar, you're up. Tell us a little bit about your day job by way of introduction. And my colleague, Megan Gonzalez, is on the line, and she will be able to share any links to the documents that you might have been interested in sharing. Couple minutes, Omar, take it away.
Great. Thanks so much, Aisha. I am so happy to be able to be here and be part of this amazing panel. Yes, I'm in Grand Rapids. I work for the Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce. I'm on the executive team for the chamber. It's an organization that's committed to creating a thriving and prosperous West Michigan for all. And when I look at that, mission statement for us for all, that's what got us involved into welcome work. Now, I want to make sure that I share that the on-ramp to the inclusion superhighway, the on-ramp to welcome work comes in different forms. You could start this work based on the social justice components, and there are some communities that need to understand the economic impact and use that lens in order just to see the importance of having welcome work in their community. And it was through partnership with Welcome America, with the economic impact study that we had with Gateways for Growth as well, and New American Economies that allowed us to be able to share and a truth that we already knew, that immigrants and refugees in our community were a positive force for economic prosperity, and that they accounted for growth in our population. When we looked at the stats from 2016 to 2018, and we saw that our county had grown by 4%, but within that growth, our immigrant population grew by over 16%. That got people thinking that these were individuals that were buying homes, creating new jobs through entrepreneurship, filling classrooms. And with talent being one of our top reoccurring issues from a business perspective, this encouraged business leaders to say, yes, let's look at welcome work, because we need individuals, talented individuals that can fill the multiple jobs that we have in our community. Now, this allowed us to add, bring other organizations along that are doing welcome work through the nonprofit sector, but now collectively be able to create a welcome plan that was informed by our immigrant and refugee population. And now we're sitting, launching this welcome plan from 5 different perspectives, and I hope that we can add those links so you can get a chance to see not only the economic impact report, but also a link to our welcome plan to see the thoughtfulness, intentionality around our welcome plan that was informed by more than 800 survey respondents from many, many different countries of origin that were represented in our welcome plan. For me, this is an area of passion. As an immigrant myself from Mexico, knowing what it feels like when you are not welcomed. And now that I have the honor to be able to work for an organization that promotes economic prosperity, my goal and my role is to ensure that our strategic growth includes those individuals that come from different nations, different countries, to create an inclusive economic growth.
Thank you, Omar. We're excited to learn more about that. For intros, we're going to go now to Christina De Silva from the city of Dallas. Christina, introduce yourself through telling us a little bit about your day job and what brings you to this work.
All right. Thank you, everyone. My name is Christina De Silva, and I can say that I'm proud immigrant from the Republic of Panama. So this issue is very personal for me. And being able to serve in the role as the Welcoming Communities and Immigrant Affairs Officer for the city of Dallas is just a really exciting opportunity for me, because I was actually just mentioning this to some of our team members. I feel like we are in a very critical time and in a critical space where not only do we have the opportunity to be proactive and create equitable opportunities for everyone to thrive, but really look at how our communities can become more globally competitive. And so this is just a really exciting role to be in. I'll also share that previous to working in the city of Dallas, I used to work for the city of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and was able to start the welcoming efforts in that city. So it's been an interesting journey, starting the work in Tulsa and seeing it in its nascent stage, and then being in this role where I'm in a stage of stabilizing and growing the work that was started.
Thank you, Christina. We're going to dive into locating this work in place in just a minute, but let's hear from Emily next. Emily, bring us into your day job and what brings you to this work.
Thank you. It's great to be here and sharing about welcoming work. I've had the pleasure of working in both the city of Charlotte and now in the city of San Antonio. For San Antonio, I'm the language access manager, developing their language access programming. So San Antonio forever has been a multilingual city, but as become and realize more about the need for language access, they decided to form an office for that work. And I was really thrilled to be able to be the person to do that. For the city of Charlotte, I joined when the office was called the Office of International Relations, and got to transform that work into being more of a focus on how do all departments work together to unify our community. And that was where I got my introduction into Welcoming America. So it's been a journey and a travel, and I'm glad to have the support of this organization and the connection with my peers to be a partner in welcoming. And it's lovely to be here.
Thanks, Emily. Like I said, we're going to dive into some of the questions of regionalism in just a moment, but I want to pose a question to the panel. Anybody can answer, or everybody can answer. Tell the audience what you thought on your first day of a welcoming role, whether that be a paid role or a committee role. What did you think welcoming was, and how would you describe it today? In a word, a phrase, or a short statement? how you started, how it's going.
It's okay. I'll start us off.
Please.
So before joining local government, I continued to work for government in one form or another. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the Dominican Republic. And two of the Peace Corps goals are around promoting understanding. So promoting understanding within your community about Americans, and then vice versa. And there's only 3 Peace Corps goals. So they saw that it'd be so important that they made it 2/3 of the goals of the partnership. And that welcoming piece of that didn't become, my understanding of it expanded over time within this work. And talking about welcoming as a concept and as a priority within this work has had me reflect on my time in the Peace Corps in a big way, and recognizing that a lot of that work is non-tangible. It isn't about the amount of people that showed up to something. It's not necessarily, you can't write it down in a report about how it transformed the income growth that somebody had from this one thing. It is a non-tangible thing that grows over time, and you find it in the relationships that are created. You find it in how people change the way that they interact with people. And so it's interesting to think about how I come across how welcoming work was on my day one of the job, because my perception of it has changed in so many ways as I continue to talk about this work. And today, what that's becoming is, how do we become welcoming by decentralizing English in our spaces? How do we make sure that people can interact with us as local government in the language, their primary language? How do we make sure that our employees are able to bring their full selves to the table and bring that bilingual skill set as they support their own community and the community that they work in as they work for the city?
Thanks, Emily. Christina or Omar, you want to comment on Emily's take or share your own, how it started, how it's going?
Yeah, I'd be happy to share. So when I started this work, I was not expecting to be involved with local government. I had previously been working for community-based organizations focused on advocacy and supporting immigrant families and schools. And I attended too many town hall meetings and spoke too loud, I guess, and got appointed to serve for a mayor that had just recently been elected. And that was in the fall of 2016. When I started this work, I was working for a Republican mayor under a Republican governor in a state that had a real strong anti-immigrant history with policy. And then just a few weeks after getting my keys to the office, we actually had a new federal administration, right, in 2017. So honestly, on day one, I was super nervous. I thought a lot of this work was going to be reactive. I thought we would be constantly trying to counterattack the volatile policy changes. And in my experience, there has been some of that, I'm not going to lie. But what has surprised me and what has given me the most hope is how the welcoming framework provides a resilient, proactive, compassionate response. And in Tulsa, when I started, we began with community leaders, community members from different sectors, and we were able to envision, imagine, and dream what it would look like for our city to become a welcoming city. And it was, you could tell just the excitement and the energy that came from dreaming beyond the reactionary, right? So it really also helped us recognize what local assets and opportunities that we could leverage. And then also being here in Dallas, I've seen that in addition to creating that foundation of welcoming that's been proactive and seeking new opportunities and forward looking, we have actually been able to use welcoming to strengthen other equity efforts. So our local city has been really committed to reducing disparities, whether that's racial disparities, geographic disparities. And so the framework that we started 5 years ago here in Dallas is actually informing other equity strategies, and has actually helped us strengthen our city efforts on a whole.
Thanks. Omar, anything to add before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add that reiterating that sometimes you just have to kind of shift the paradigm a little bit in how people look at welcoming work, right? And although, we should be really talking about creating a sense of belonging and welcoming being just the first step, we know that some people are at the early stages of their inclusion journey, right? And so it's important that we created collaboration and invited stakeholders from different industries in the private sector and public sector to make sure that it was a collaborative, effort, and also being able to let individuals know that this isn't something that had a finish line, right? We had some strategies, but also that there are some short-term, midterm, and long-term initiatives that we would have to do. And some are easy levers that we could pull. And once we started seeing some of those smaller wins that were impactful, people, I think what happens is they start saying, well, this is possible, right?
Yeah.
This is possible.
Thank you. We're going to shift perspective now and talk a little bit about locating your welcoming definition and efforts and early efforts in place. But before I do that, I just want to remind the audience that you can use the chat to put questions to the panelists, and the team will feed them to me, and we'll hope to incorporate a few audience questions into this discussion as well. So the chat is now working. Please let us know what questions you have. All right, panelists. So let's talk about, we've mentioned North Carolina, Texas, Oklahoma, and Michigan, and your ties and what brought you to those places. Can you talk a little bit about considering place when you're deciding how to get started and gathering allies, and what role local context plays in what welcoming is? Who wants to start?
I can start. So as I mentioned earlier, my experience has been in the South, basically in the buckle of the Bible Belt. And so when I think about the communities that I've served in and the spaces that they have the history, one of the things that I've always pointed out is, while you might hear sort of the stories of anti-immigrant policies and xenophobic efforts, there's another side too of these spaces. And one of the things that I always try to point out is, not only have these spaces been historic when it comes to immigrants settling into these and choosing these cities, but we've actually had some incredible faith-based institutions that have really led welcoming efforts from a community standpoint. And so, part of these community efforts are because of their faith drives welcoming. And so tapping into that was something that was really important when it came to talking about why our local government was doing this. I saw it in Tulsa, and I see it really clearly here in Dallas, that welcoming as part of our community identity, it doesn't come from government. It comes from community partners. It comes from faith-based communities, from business leaders, from community-based organizations, from schools. And so really being sure to work that with your allies or partners, because ultimately these are the groups, these are the organizations that have been doing it before you started and are going to continue this work moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
To build on the things that Christina was saying, I've got two pieces that I like to always try to include within my planning work, and that's nothing about us without us and asset-based planning. So for Nothing About Us Without Us, it's, just as an example, it's the rush to get people to take part in surveys. Oh, we didn't get a diverse response in our surveys. And the question is, well, how did you plan for everybody to participate? Did you include people from different communities within how you ask these questions? Did you ask whether or not surveying was the right mode of doing to getting responses in the first place? And it's always really wonderful to be in a room when it comes to planning and somebody else is there to ask that same question before I even get to that point. So I think that within equity work, within welcoming work, it's becoming a question that's asked very frequently in different ways, is how is the community involved in the planning process from the very beginning? And when we do that, there's so much more success in it. I think that there's often a fear that things will take more time because, oh, I have to figure out how to open up that planning space. But really it's worth the time that's spent, and you have a lot more success in the outcomes that come with it. And so that works very well within welcoming work. If you think about it just from the perspective of Welcoming Week, when you're planning events together with the communities, all the communities that are going to take part in it, you're going to see a lot more fun, a lot more interaction, and a lot more diversity of who's participating. And then the asset-based planning, there's a lot of different terminologies within this, but it's basically the idea of everybody brings something to the table that has value, and really highlighting that and making it known as a incredibly helpful thing in any program or service that's being planned. And so that can be anything from recognizing where people's cultural institutions are, the places of worship, to community leaders, but also just the fact that you've got a new community member who is an excellent soccer player. And this is a great avenue for creating a community gathering event, is tapping into that skill and teaching soccer. And when I came to San Antonio, one of the friends I made here really quickly showed me the asset-based study that they did of the new Afghan population. And so they did focus groups and they went out and asked, and we're talking about a population that is brand new here in San Antonio. And they had people responding with all of the things that they bring to the table. So they may not have built a cultural institution yet, but they do have people who excel in all of these things and were exciting and willing to show it. And being able to have that information and plan together with those folks has been a really wonderful opportunity.
I want to tack on to what Emily said, and how one of our concerns, in this work is that we didn't want our welcome plan to be prescriptive. We didn't want to be, although we all have our own lived experiences, we wanted to make sure that we had as many voices as possible in our welcome work. And so it required us to think differently, outside the box, when it came to seeking this input. So, Emily mentioned, centers of influence, right? Individuals, churches, and also, our survey was done in multiple languages, but we had to think, even though it was mobile friendly, that the technology divide in the technology literacy levels of our immigrant and refugee community as well. So we had volunteers in this welcome work that did one-on-one surveys where we captured the information, and then made sure that what our data analysts were receiving in the surveys was resonating with our respondents. So going back and having these focus groups, at local schools, at churches, and nonprofit organizations that are trusted sources in these communities, to make sure that what we were hearing was what they were saying. And I feel like that was one of the reasons why I feel like our plan is informed by our immigrant and refugee community as well.
Thanks, Omar. I have a question here about where to find local allies, and an audience member sort of layered on about asking specifically how you partner with city government and resettlement agencies. So I'll just put that to the group for discussion.
Yeah, I think I'll start with who drove this, right? Yeah, even though we had an agency here that assists our refugee community to resettle in our community, and the Chamber of Commerce driving this welcome work, we included city government, our county government, and an affinity chamber in our community, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, be part of the steering of what this welcome work was going to be. What we came to find out was that the city and county strategic plans on inclusion, the welcome work was in a complete alignment with what their goals were. What we did was like create a pathway to be able to meet those objectives. So it basically it worked like cufflinks, having the Chamber of Commerce, having organizations that serve immigrant refugee communities, and also city and county government, and keeping everyone informed on what we were seeing, what we were hearing, and then once we were able to put together some major buckets based on answers, saying, okay, this is what we're hearing. There's a lot of information, but here's the top 5 areas that we need to focus on. And you know what? And here are some strategies. Not being prescriptive, but saying like, if you wanted to tackle creating economic inclusion and helping immigrant or refugee individuals, entrepreneurs, here's some recommendations. And or when it comes to equitable access to services, here's some things on language access that our survey respondents are telling us. And so it seemed like slow work. It seemed like the grind, it took a while, but we wanted to make sure that it wasn't rushed either.
Thanks. Emily or Christina, can you talk about finding local allies in the early days and particularly partnering with resettlement agencies, which the audience was curious about?
Yeah, so I feel like whenever city government meets, like finds local leaders, especially within diverse communities, like we hold fast.
Yeah.
It's like, here's this person, here's my connection, let me hold fast this person. So the finding of local allies, I think people present themselves on a very frequent basis. But the thing that I try to encourage is building new leadership as well. So when I have somebody that I've been working with frequently, try to find ways to invite them to bring others to the table, also recognizing that many of our local leaders and our local community-based organizations, they have a lot on their plate. And if I can support them by building leadership and building up within that organization, then that's perfect. Like it's a win-win all around. And one way that I've seen a lot of that leadership growth is through, especially in the connection with local government, is through like My City Academies. They're called quite a few different things. Charlotte's is an amazing My City Academy model. San Antonio has one here as well, but I think they're all over the country. And people get to know what the functions of local government are like. And every single time those cohorts, like people will find the thing that is their topic that they need to live into and breathe into, and they're part of that. So My City Academies and really making sure that you're seeking out diverse participation in those is a huge asset. When it comes to partnering with refugee resettlement agencies, I think on the Afghan resettlement as being just a really great example of partnership that happened in so many different places. Nobody was prepared to receive the sheer number of people all at once that came in. The resettlement agencies in Charlotte and San Antonio both had these task forces that developed around them that just kind of like created this envelope of support. And so I think that resettlement agencies are always open to that support and filling that gap, recognizing like their model is 90 days of resettlement, and there's some other programs that go in. But when they have an ability to bring people into other programs, bring the folks that are resettling into other programs and create those cross connections, there's always an opening for that. And so a good place to start is attending their events. I feel like resettlement agencies always have events going on, and getting to know them. And then if you're part of an organization, that should be part of their quarterly calls, making sure that you're bringing everything you can to those quarterly calls, by helping fill those gaps and needs, housing, any pieces of those conversations that are really challenging for our resettlement agencies.
Thanks. Christina, anything to add before I give you my last question?
I was just going to say, normally when I think about partnerships, I try to categorize it as like, are we leading? Are we the leads? Are we like coming alongside, or are we just providing technical assistance and just general guidance? And so when I think about our partnerships with refugee resettlement, obviously they have a federal mandate, so they are the leads when it comes to refugee resettlement. So when I consider our role as a local government, we're coming alongside, especially as we consider the refugee resettlement agencies have to go through a very thorough, very specific process for refugee resettlement. And so we meet on a monthly basis, not just local government, but also local school districts, the county health department, and we hear from the refugee resettlement agencies what the trends are, what their numbers are, what are some of the concerns they're having, and seeing how we can collaboratively problem solve. So I'll give an example. One of the concerns that the refugee resettlement agencies had was that our recent refugee population, Afghan population especially, was having difficulties scheduling vaccine appointments that were required by the school district. And they had sort of like a deadline of when they had to get their vaccines. Otherwise, they would be kicked out of the school district. So this was a forum where we could all talk about, okay, this is obviously a requirement we want to make sure people can get access to. At the same time, our county health department was fully booked with appointments. And so we realized like, okay, we need to come up with a solution that's accessible. So we were able to host a vaccine clinic in one of our libraries that was really close, like walking distance for Afghan refugee families. And so in that way, we had the county, we had the school district kind of all working together to support the refugee resettlement agencies, which were the lead. So I kind of give that as like a really concrete example of how the city supported in that aspect. But then, we also recognize that there are a lot of other concerns that disproportionately impact refugees, housing standards. So helping provide information on how to call 311, having sessions to train on how to call 311, and having regular presence of 311 at refugee resettled, at the apartment complexes where we know where there are a lot of refugees being recently resettled. So yeah, it's an ongoing process and ongoing communication. And I always consider, what is it that the city can do to support efforts?
Thank you. There was a question from the chat about the main barriers you encounter and who are the essential bridging figures locally. And this question is from an academic. And in order to squeeze it in, I'm going to ask for us to just list. So one from Omar, one from Emily, one from Christina. Common barriers and essential figures to help bridge. Who's ready?
So I'll start with just a barrier and then turn it over to somebody else. The perception of time is just like the biggest barrier. So it's the worry that I have to get this thing done right now, and I don't have the time to build trust. I don't have the time to reach out to these different communities, and so forth. And alternatively, on the other side of that, well, if you don't take the time, then our programs aren't reaching the people that they need to be getting to.
Yeah, if I may layer on, Emily, the perception of the political calendar too, like we have to get it done between this session and this session, or this election and that election. Yep. Anybody else ready with a common barrier or a key figure to help bridge?
Common barrier is like, the question like, what does success look like, right? It comes from people that, don't understand, like, is this the work that we need to be doing as a community? It's like, yeah, it is. So what does success look like? And to be able to get individuals to, again, see it through different lenses, right? So leaning on different community stakeholders. Again, for us, it's having the private sector saying, we need individuals to fill jobs. It's either going to take automation, immigration, or Talibirths. And Talibirths is like an 18-year waiting period, right? And willing participants. And so we have people coming in. Let's figure out how we can do this and do it in a way that makes sense. So it's having people that can bridge the gap, that can share a different perspective. And so we're glad to see that finally it's in our welcome plan coordinator is part of the county staff now. So they're actually investing dollars into welcome work.
That's one of those key bridging figures, right? The county, city and county staff. Christina, anything to add?
Trying to think about the most common barrier. I think from a narrative standpoint, it is something that trying to always help people understand that immigrants are residents. And even though they may have just recently arrived, or maybe they've been here for decades, just sort of recognizing that these are residents and neighbors. And sometimes that comes up in different ways, right? Sometimes that bubbles up because, it costs a lot of money to translate these documents. Well, these are our residents. They're required to have that information. They're required to provide the information in their language that they prefer. So to be honest with you, sometimes it's just a matter of like gently reminding folks like, oh no, these are our neighbors, these are our residents, these are our constituents. And so, thankfully, at the city of Dallas, we had the Welcoming Dallas Strategic Plan unanimously approved as part of our local policy by City Council. And so that really helps provide some teeth and some, just strengthen the importance of this priority. And, even though I have to sometimes, kind of gently remind folks, I feel like it's that having that Welcoming Dallas Strategic Plan as part of our local policy has really helped sort of our team members understand the importance.
Thank you, Omar, Emily, and Christina. I wish we had another hour. I have so many things I want to talk to you about and get your voice out into the audience of folks who are just starting. But if you are in the audience and you want more information about engaging with this work, I'm going to kick it to my colleague, Anthony, who's going to talk a little bit about getting involved with Welcoming America. Panelists, if you have time and urge and inclination, if you could get in the chat, you can continue to share links to your key documents. You can triage a few questions if you feel like it. And Anthony, I will pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aisha. Appreciate that. What I'm going to do here really quickly, I know we're winding down on some time here, but wanted to also, since this is a webinar about what is welcoming, we want to make sure that you learn a little bit about us as an organization and some of the different ways that we support welcoming. So I'd like to just as quickly as possible in the next 7 minutes or so, share a little bit about us as an organization and specifically our network, of which we have a number of members, and those members are really a part of the network that receive access to tools, to resources, technical assistance, and really have access to a global peer network of organizations that are nonprofits, as well as government organizations that are doing this work of transforming communities that are going to become more welcoming places. A lot of our participating members connect with their peers as well, and that's a really valuable part of what we bring as our welcoming network benefit there, in connecting them to peers all across the country and all across the globe, where they can ask questions, they can get guidance based on experiences similar to what you just heard from our panelists here. It's a great way to kind of build that connection. If you are joining us today and you're not familiar with our organization, I do invite you to go to the link that's on the screen there. You'll see welcomingamerica.org. That's our main website. You can also then select the Welcoming Network option at the top of the screen and just visit that area and learn more about our network and everything that is offered there. A little bit more insight into our network as well. Over the years, we've really seen this network grow, whereas today we have over 300 members that comprise the network. And you can see on the screen here, again, it's composed of nonprofit organizations as well as local government organizations across 8 different countries at this point. Has really kind of helped us grow our international efforts to provide that opportunity to exchange best practices, resources, ideas between globally inclusive cities. Some of the membership benefits that we do offer here, again, if you go to that network page, you'll learn more about this, but you'll see a very detailed description and breakdown of the benefits that are available here. Some of the highlights you see here on the screen now. Coaching and strategy planning is really tailored to the specific members' needs based on projects or questions that they need at that point. And that is scheduled with members of our Welcoming America staff. And those calls pretty much will result in next steps that that member can take towards relevant research, talking points, or even connecting to one of our national partners or a peer in the network as well to kind of help along with that. Along with the coaching, again, you'll see some of the other benefits, variety of webinars, very similar to what we're doing here today. We do a number of webinars that are exclusive to our members of the network. Some of the topics that we cover on those are things like bridge building strategies, language access, welcoming economy efforts, and community planning for immigrant inclusion as well. Members also receive exclusive opportunities to join communities of practice programs, and those are geared toward a specific topic or a specific need that might be something that is common within the network there. Those programs are really designed to allow for the connection of members and again, to exchange ideas and challenges, and then also improvements that can immediately be applied to the welcoming work that is being done within their communities. Again, all of these programs are available to members of the network. And again, you can learn more about that on the webpage that I shared just a moment ago. Another thing I do want to point out to many of you was again touched on maybe briefly with our panelists here, is our certified welcoming program. And over the last couple of years, we worked really hard to update the welcoming standard, which is kind of the roadmap that kind of drives our certified welcoming program. It lays out the policies, the practices, and programs that are expected in communities that are consider themselves to be welcoming communities. The standard, again, is the backbone of the certification program. Certified Welcoming itself has been in existence for about 5 years and has really helped to distinguish the localities for the work that they're doing. Now, what we're looking to do here to really start charting a clearer course for the communities and to really distinguish those that are very advanced in the work that they're doing. We are going to be launching a new tiered system for certification. Along with that, we are introducing a Welcoming Standard 2.0 that was tied to this tiered certification system. It's currently being piloted in 3 different localities. And if you're interested in learning more about certification, we'll be starting to accept applications toward the April timeframe of 2023. Definitely invite you to also visit the site you see on your page now, certifiedwelcoming.org. It's going to give you all of the detailed information about the program, as well as information about how to apply for that if you're interested. Additionally, beginning in May of 2023, Certified Welcoming will be offering info session series that includes an introduction to certification, also a mini boot camp on the standard, the new Welcoming Standard, and we'll also schedule some drop-in office hours that you can ask very specific questions if you'd like to do that. Want to spend just a quick minute and also talk a little bit about what is the equivalent of our annual conference, and that is our Welcoming Interactive. If you're not aware of that, again, you can go to the link on the screen there, welcominginteractive.org. In May of this year, we were able to see it come back into existence as an in-person event, which was very exciting for us. We were able to host it in Charlotte, North Carolina. And that was our first in-person since 2019. So it was obviously very exciting. I think what really drives the excitement of the interactive is being able to gather in person and really connect with individuals that you don't know, make new connections, being able to share a lot of the experiences that people have. We had over 500 individuals in Charlotte joining us, and that was just an amazing result for us to see that many people coming together. And again, if you've not attended this conference, it is our annual conference that's going on every year. It is a time that brings together not only network members, but also partners and others from around the world that are learning. They're discussing immigrant inclusion, economic development, civic engagement, much more. We run the gamut on the different types of topics that are covered in our many breakout sessions. In 2023, we're going to be in San Jose, California. It's going to be April 26th through the 28th. We'll be announcing a lot of details around that in the coming weeks, as well as shortly after the first of this year. So please look out for that. We'd love to have you join us there if you're able to do so. We also have discount opportunities for members, and there's also scholarship opportunities. So if you're interested in joining us in San Jose, please look out for information on that. I know we are coming up on the top of the hour, so I want to stay respectful of everyone's time here, but I've just kind of thrown a lot at you here in a short amount of time. If you have any other questions related to any of this, please feel free to reach out to us. You can send an email to membership@welcomingamerica.org. I also want to remind you that this is, again, the first in a 2-part series, and our next webinar is going to come to us this Thursday, again at 2 p.m. Eastern time, and this one is going to go into getting started on welcoming work. We'll have a number of our Welcoming America staff really kind of dig into some really detailed examples on a lot of the things that we've shared with you today. As a registrant of today's webinar, you will automatically get into that one. So the link that you use to join today, you'll use again on Thursday. If you need that resent to you, just shoot an email over to events@welcomingamerica.org and we'll get that resent. Otherwise, just use that same link on Thursday, and we look forward to seeing you at that webinar as well. I wish we had time for some questions here, but again, we are right at the top of the hour. Feel free to send any questions you might have to us via email. If you don't already follow us on social, here are our social channels, as well as our YouTube and LinkedIn areas. So please follow us there. Again, thank you for your time today. We really appreciate you joining us. If you're interested in membership or already a member of the network, we're excited to work with you and your organizations. And daily, we are grateful for the work that you are doing in your communities to create the welcoming places where everyone feels like they belong. Thank you again for joining, everyone. Have a great rest of your afternoon and a great week.